So we talked about the anxiety that is caused in people in terms of going into social situations or dating.
A serial killer who hunted across continents, leaving a trail of terror in their wake. This is no ordinary case. For years, the world was gripped by a global manhunt as the killer struck in multiple countries, always staying one step ahead of law enforcement. Each murder was more calculated than the last, and every crime scene bore a chilling signature. Who was this elusive predator? What drove them to kill without mercy across borders? The story of the serial killer who crossed continents is more terrifying than any fiction. The mysterious beginnings, a global path of death. The story of the serial killer begins in an unexpected European city, where the first victim was discovered in a quiet, peaceful neighborhood. Initially, it appeared to be a tragic, isolated event, with no obvious connections to other crimes. However, as time passed, police began to notice disturbing similarities between this murder and other reports from different parts of Europe. The killer's method, a precise and calculated approach to their crimes, left investigators puzzled. At first, authorities believed they were dealing with a single isolated incident, but soon the pattern of killings began to emerge, revealing something far more sinister. As the killings spread, spanning multiple countries across Europe, investigators were forced to confront a terrifying reality. They were not dealing with a local killer, but a highly organized individual operating across borders. This new revelation added complexity to the case, as law enforcement had to navigate multiple legal systems and jurisdictions to track the killer's movements. Each crime scene left behind distinct, eerie signatures that suggested the killer was meticulous and methodical. The murders weren't random. They followed a carefully crafted path, leading investigators to believe the killer's reach extended far beyond the boundaries of one country. A signature killer, the calling card. As the investigations into the killings progressed, detectives began to notice a chilling pattern. The killer left behind a unique signature at every crime scene, an unsettling symbol or object that seemed out of place. At first, it was difficult to connect these seemingly random clues, but over time, investigators realized that these calling cards were not accidental. Each one was carefully placed, offering a cryptic message to those who dared to decipher it. Whether it was an item that symbolized a specific place, a personal object, or an emblem of power, the signature was a signature of the killer's need for control and recognition. The killer's signature was not just a physical mark, but a psychological one. It reflected their deep desire to be acknowledged, even in death. Investigators were faced with the terrifying realization that this killer wasn't just targeting random victims, they were sending a message. The consistency of the signature led to the conclusion that this was the work of a highly organized and methodical individual, someone who took pride in their work and wanted to establish their presence across the globe. These calling cards made the case even more complicated, as they were not only a clue, but also a disturbing reminder of the killer's ability to manipulate their environment and stay one step ahead of the law. Crossing borders. The international manhunt. As the killings spread across continents, the scope of the investigation grew exponentially. Detectives from different countries were suddenly involved in a global effort to catch the killer. Each new crime scene added urgency to the case, and the pressure to cooperate across borders intensified. International law enforcement agencies, such as Interpol, Europol, and the FBI, all became part of the search, sharing information and resources. However, the killer's ability to seamlessly cross from one country to another made it incredibly difficult for authorities to pin them down. The lack of clear connections between the locations of the murders, combined with the killer's meticulous planning, kept them out of reach. The international aspect of the investigation highlighted the challenges of tracking a criminal who didn't adhere to the typical borders of jurisdiction. The killer seemed to have a unique understanding of international travel, often slipping in and out of countries without leaving behind significant evidence. With each passing month, the global manhunt grew more intense, but the killer always remained elusive. This pattern of evasion, combined with the growing body count, sparked fear and panic across nations as the killer seemed unstoppable. The global nature of the case turned the investigation into one of the largest and most complex manhunts in history, with detectives working tirelessly in the hopes of finally identifying the murderer and bringing an end to their reign of terror. The motive. What drove the killer? As the investigation deepened, authorities began to search for clues that could explain the killer's motive. Initially, the murders appeared random, with no clear pattern other than the methodical nature of the killings. However, as experts analyzed the crime scenes and the victims, they noticed subtle signs that pointed to a more complex reason behind the murders. The killer wasn't just taking lives for the thrill of it. There was a twisted logic to the selection of victims. It became apparent that the killer had a particular type of victim in mind. Each one seemed to fit a certain psychological or personal profile. This narrowed the field, suggesting the killer was driven by a deeper, more personal need. Some investigators speculated that the killer's actions were fueled by a deep-seated desire for control and dominance. They carefully chose victims from different walks of life, across various cultures and countries, as if seeking to prove their power over the world. The killer's methodical approach, their ability to evade law enforcement, and the consistency of their signature all pointed to a sense of superiority and a need to manipulate both the victims and the authorities. As investigators continued to study the crimes, a chilling possibility emerged. The killer was not just a product of external circumstances, but someone whose actions were deeply rooted in their own psychological breakdown, a breakdown that turned them into a relentless predator with a dangerous global agenda. The shocking end. A killer's final move. After years of evading capture, the killer's reign of terror finally came to an unexpected end. The breakthrough came when a victim, who had miraculously survived one of the killer's attacks, managed to escape and provide key details to the authorities. This survivor's testimony helped investigators piece together a crucial lead that eventually led them to the killer's location. A combination of forensic evidence, witness accounts, and the survivor's description enabled law enforcement to track the killer down. In a dramatic operation, the authorities finally apprehended the killer, ending the global manhunt that had gripped the world for so long. The arrest of the killer sent shockwaves through the public, as their true identity and background were revealed in a series of shocking revelations. The killer's motivations, the careful planning of each murder, and their ability to remain undetected for so long all came to light. What followed was a complex investigation into the psychological state of the killer and their reasoning behind the cross-continental killings. Despite being captured, the killer left many questions unanswered, and the full extent of their twisted agenda may never be fully understood. The case remains one of the most chilling examples of international crime, with its final resolution only raising more unsettling questions about the nature of evil. The capture of this serial killer may have closed one of the most harrowing chapters in criminal history, but the unsettling nature of their crimes still lingers in the minds of many. Their ability to elude capture across continents, the chilling signatures left at each crime scene, and the dark psychological motivations behind their actions paint a picture of a mind far beyond ordinary comprehension. While the killer may be behind bars, their story serves as a grim reminder that evil can cross any boundary, leaving behind a legacy of terror that's hard to forget.